Today, I'll show how I turned this plain, boring wall into this subway tile backsplash. First step is to clean the wall with a pre-paint cleaner. This helps the tile adhesive bond to the wall. You'd be surprised how much grease can build up on a wall over time, especially near the stove. Next, I removed all of the outlet and switch cover plates. Now I'm unscrewing the switches and outlets from the gang boxes inside of the wall. I didn't bother switching off the breaker because I'm comfortable working with electricity, at least 120 volts, and I know what not to touch. To be 100% safe from getting shocked, you would need to switch off the power at the breaker box. I only need to pull them out far enough to fit the tiles behind them. These are 12 by 4 inches, a little bigger than a traditional subway tile. I'm going to be cutting a lot in half. However, I just ran into a problem. This tile cutter I have here, it doesn't adjust far enough to get a 6-inch cut. This guide only goes out so far. I could just remove the guide, but because I'll be cutting so many of these in half, I'd have to measure, mark, and line up each one every time. Having the guide in place would do all that for me. So I've got an old square here that I'll modify to be a larger guide. I need to make this slot a little larger to fit the threaded tightening knob through. So I'm just reaming out the end of the slot here. That should do. Perfect. Get this tightened down. Get everything lined up. And tighten this handle in place. There. Now I have a 6-inch guide. So I can just cut and go, cut and go. Let's test it out. So I'm pushing down, which scores the tile, and then press down to snap it. All right, we're good to go. So that was my first time ever laying tile. Didn't look too hard, right? Well, there were some issues. When I first started up in this top corner, you might have noticed I stopped and double checked the measurement. Well, I didn't really accommodate for the space between these two. Once I added an 1/8 inch between, it pushed the edge out just a little bit. Now I think it would look good if there was an 1/8 inch space all the way around, but with that little gap sticking out, it wasn't going to work out in the long run. So I did try to shave off that tiny edge with the cutter, but once I made that cut, there just wasn't enough pressure on the small side to snap the tile. So that didn't work out. So my solution to that was just to butt them together in the middle and have 1/8 inch on each side. Now the biggest issue, and one I honestly should have expected, is that this is not square. As I went along to the right here, the cabinet got lower and lower and lower. Not a lot, maybe about a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch, but just enough to throw off my spacing. So to remedy that, I wanted to keep the spacing equal between all the tiles because that is a lot of contrast and you're gonna see if that's uneven. So I pulled out my spacers at the bottom and floated the tiles down a tiny bit to make up for that space. I need to keep them evenly spaced up on top. And you'll notice I didn't do this in a time lapse. I went back and added this. This outlet was pretty uneven. It was really pushed out on the top because the tile's behind it. On the bottom, it was kind of pushed in pretty far and it didn't line up quite right when I put the cover on it. Now it's good. And I actually went with these 12 by 4 inch tiles because it saved me from having to cut all these outlets. However, there's one part where I did goof. You can see here I was almost ready for it to notch a little section out for this screw. I ended up not having to do it. But here, because this cover uses a screw at the very top instead of a screw toward the center like this cover, I am gonna have to go back and drill out this hole just a little bit so that the screw can go through and not hit the tile. And I bet a lot of you were wondering why I left this baseboard on the back of the counter. Well, the counter is one of the things I like most about the kitchen, so it's not going to be replaced anytime soon. And a lot of people do take this out. However, if I took out this bottom piece here, there wasn't going to be a way to properly space the tiles to where I wouldn't have to cut strips off of the top tile long ways. And as we saw, you can't cut strips with a tile cutter. It works a lot better if you have some space on each side to evenly push down with a tile cutter and snap that tile. So in order to get an even space here where I don't have to cut small sections of strips off of the top of the tiles, I left this here. This is the 3.5 inches and went with 4 inch, 4 inch, 4 inch, and 2 inch. So there you go. It's not as easy as some of the pros make it look, but it was a pretty easy learning process. Now, I'm going to do this side in real time and walk you through the steps. So on this shaft, I went from a corner to another edge. Over here, I'm going to have an edge where I need to wrap around. So I'm going to have these 2-inch pieces starting here vertically, flush with the edge of the counter. I'm going to have 2 of these going up, and then I'm going to have this quarter piece at the top, this bull nose. And that's going to sit up here, and then I'm going to have more of these going across here on the top. And that grout does get pretty messy. I made quite a mess on the other side, so I'm going to take a precaution here and just put a piece of tape up. Okay. And I'll do the same across the counter again, because I definitely slopped some of the adhesive on here on the other side. My trowel here. Now the pros that I watched on YouTube, they make it look really easy to spread this. It actually takes some work to get everything smooth. And I'm glad I put this tape here, because just to get it up to the edge, it's causing me to spread it way more than I need to. And I cleaned this wall earlier, and I'm still having some adhesion issues here. It's just not wanting to stick right there. What is... I don't want a ton of that to get behind the switch there. All right, that's gonna be enough to get started with my 2-inch trim. This way, when I press it down, it's not gonna gush the adhesive out around the side. Get a spacer. By the way, I'm using 2 different types of spacers. This one, they're all 1/8 inch. This one has a flat side, which is great for the bottom. It also has a T with one going up, which is great for where 2 of the big pieces meet together on a corner. And then I have these over here, which have a up and down, which is gonna be good where these line up with these at the top. And then there's another one on the other side when you flip this over that just has good for a side to side. And you'll see me use all of these in a second. So we're gonna start down here at the bottom. Making this flush with that edge. And the nice thing about the adhesive is if you want to come back to it, it's not going to fall off. And I can see I'm getting some oozing up from the edge here, so I'm going to take a little bit more off of that. Okay, well, and again, nothing is square in this kitchen. I'm going to have a gap at the top. The ideal time to do this would be before cabinets are installed. And on a lot of professional videos, that's when they're doing it. And now I see why. And we got our bull nose for the top here. The pre-mixed adhesive is the way to go. This is enough for me to worry about, getting these all lined up and placed correctly and cut. I can't imagine having to do all this and worry about mixing the adhesive as I go. All right, I like this so far. Now we're ready to lay down the big tiles. And also I spaced this out where I can lay down a full 12-incher here, a half here, and then another full 12-incher here to cover up this hole. Maybe I'll get lucky and one of my other cut pieces will fit there. Let's see. Yes. Okay. I'm pushing this big one on the bottom here to the right to make that flush with my trim. I'm gonna do another one right here. Just going around and making sure these are pressed in all the way. And these are repositionable a little bit for a while, so I can go back and fine tune them a little bit more as I need to. And something I did on the other side is I tiled out and then I didn't have a lot of room to spread over here. So I'm gonna start by spreading over here so I can go back toward the right and not worry about the tile getting in the way once I've already put it down. The pros make the spreading look very easy. This opening in the wall here, that's an old landline. Does anybody use those anymore? So we're just gonna cover that up. And I went up a little high there. I'll have to wipe that off. Again, I've got a weird area where it's just not wanting to bond, right here in the middle. So if I just press down, it seems to help a little bit. I'm gonna measure this one because I want to sit right in the middle. So I will have to cut a little bit off the edge. So let me find the center point of this tile. So these aren't actually 12 inches. They're sold as a 4x12. They're actually 11 and just over 3/4 inch wide. I'm using a Sharpie on these gloss tiles because it wipes right off. And that's gonna be my halfway point. So this is gonna go right here. That'll be in the center. And I'm gonna, unfortunately, have to shave just a little bit off of this to clear this outlet. This split will cover up a lot, actually. I can go more. Do it right there. There we go. It's tough to do those trivial cuts. You can see that's not exactly a clean cut either. This edge is a little bit off, but it's gonna be hidden behind the plate cover anyways. I want to keep this edge hidden, so I'm going to make my mark for the center down here at the bottom. This way I'll be able to eye it up easier. Right there. And then we're gonna go with you there. And we'll do one here. Make sure this edge is right there. And one over here. Now I'm gonna go on the top and across with the full tile. Get some more room here to slide this tile behind here. Something I just noticed though is that this cover does have the holes on the top. So if my tile is right there, it's gonna be really close to being in the way of that screw. I think it'll be all right though on this side. Okay. Oh, I just realized something else. My spacing is off from here because I have an extra 1/8 inch in between here and here. I think what I'm actually gonna do is just move this one up a tiny bit to get this top edge flush. First, let's work with what I've got here so far. Spacer there, spacer there. Get this big one in place. I need a spacer right there. And yeah, I'm gonna cheat here and just push this one up a tiny bit to make it a little bit more flush with this. And a spacer in here. Okay, I'm gonna do down here next. I'm gonna need a tile that is 6 and 15/16 inches wide. Now I could always buy larger covers, which I may end up doing. I'm just flush, so I can use a piece here and a piece here. About 4 1/4 inches. And there's a rough end here. I'm gonna hide that behind my plate cover. I'll keep the smooth end from the factory facing outward where it'll be seen. Now I need to see if I can cut a tiny strip for that. It's gonna be about 1 inch wide, which is pretty small because this tends to happen when you cut them too small. So that took me a couple tries off camera, but I did get it. And now across the top. And the last corner, I'm going to need a piece the same as the bottom, which was 6 7/8. I'm going back and just running my fingers across these just to make sure they feel flush. And I already see one adjustment I'm going to make here. This little skinny piece is a little bit closer to the window frame than the ones above and below it. And that's going to look funny. So I'm going to slightly slide this one over, because remember it's hidden behind the outlet cover, and slightly move this one over. And we're only talking maybe 1/16 of an inch. But it does show, especially when you have white tile, and I'm going to use a gray grout. I went too high up here. And I am gonna have another tiny small piece up here in this corner, unfortunately, but what can you do? Let's get these all spaced out first, then I'll know the exact measurement for my last little corner piece here. A little bit too much adhesive here, and it's pretty thick right there. I gotta leave enough area for the grout. How are these two so close together? Okay. Done. I really like this side. This small section here and here, they bug me a little bit, but what are you gonna do? So next thing I'm gonna do is start in this corner and go across over to here. I gave the adhesive 2 days to cure and then removed all of the spacers and the masking tape. Get any excess adhesive out of the space between the tile and the counter. Come on out of there. Now I'm reapplying the masking tape just on the very edge of the countertop. And this is for when I do the grout next. I want to get all of this white adhesive out where it comes out to the edge, because it might show through the darker grout. I've got a float, sponge, and my grout. This is pearl gray. And I paid a little extra for this because it doesn't require any sealing afterwards, which will be nice. I have a scale for measuring and a mixing bucket, and a couple big buckets for rinsing out the sponge. So 1 or 1.1 quarts of water mixes with 10 pounds of grout. Well, that's the whole bag. So I'll start with half. There's 5 pounds of grout, and I'm going to use a drill mixer to stir it. I'll put a link to one of these guys in the description. and add half a quart of water, aka 2 cups. And I want to be sure to get the very edges mixed in. This takes a while. And still finding some dry spots around the edge. I think that's good. And I'm using the float to press and smush the grout all the way in the space between the tiles until it's flush with the surface. You can see in some of the tight areas where there wasn't enough room to fit the float, I just pressed the grout into the space with my finger. Now I'm going back with the wet sponge and wiping the surface, rinsing the sponge in the bucket, wiping the surface over and over and over. Eventually the surface cleans up. After a while, the water in the bucket will be too dirty to use, so I dump one out and start using the other bucket while the first one was being refilled. And I'm doing this using 2 large buckets of water because I don't want to use the sink to rinse the sponge and have the grout go down the drain. Once I got the worst of the grout removed from the surface, I went back with another round of clean water to remove the lighter residue. I've wiped this down like 7 times already, and you can still see there's a very fine layer of the dark grout on here. The grout is set up, and it started to harden at this point. So here's how it looks. All I have to do now is keep wiping it down with the clean sponge. I wiped the tile down 4 more times with the sponge and clean water, and it was almost perfect, except for a very fine film that made the tiles look a little dull. Now I'm just gonna wipe the tile with a terry cloth rag to get the shine back. I had to buy slightly longer screws to screw in the electrical outlets and light switches into the gang boxes. And here's how it looks with the covers installed. This was my first time doing a tile backsplash, and if I can do it, so can you. The best advice I can offer is take your time, measure, and plan everything. I'll put a list of all the tools I used down in the description. Thanks for watching.